Hello and welcome to In Pursuit of Clarity, episode number 17, entitled The Fact Delusion. I wanted to touch upon a topic I've touched on at least once before, but usually in passing, and it definitely bears repeating and further elaboration. I chose to call this series In Pursuit of Clarity, in large part because the goal is to unravel the deceptive tactics and language I believe are being used to manipulate and control people and nations. And today's topic is a prime example of this. Having said this, I should add that it's impossible to say how purposeful and conscious this deception is, how much it fits the mold of conspiratorial nefariousness as opposed to simply flawed or lazy thinking. But if I were forced to guess, I'd have to say that I think it's a bit of both. I think those culture and language shapers at the top of the power pyramid often set these wheels in motion, in order that those dutifully serving their interests will have more efficient tools to work with, sharper weapons to wield. And to kick off this conversation, I'd like to make the all-important point I hope you'll try to retain, one that I think we'd all be well served to repeat daily, or have tattooed on our foreheads, and the one that'll be the main idea underlying everything I'm about to say, and that is this. Facts are not the truth. Facts are a truth, and there's a world of difference between the two. We live in an age with a fact obsession, and this trend seems to be growing more pronounced by the day, especially among the establishment class media and popular culture. This seems to be a new narrative coming from their side of the fence, and a new power word. A concept and idea they can sense gives them great leverage to win debates or discussions, or to win over hearts and minds. And mostly minds, actually, because this reductionist and ultimately dishonest approach is more likely to fool the head than the heart. I believe this fact obsession is based on misunderstanding and muddied thinking, and that the obsessive focus creates a delusion of the possession of immutable truth, when often the case is the exact opposite. And if I'm correct, this is incredibly important, as the misconception then becomes the root of so many cognitive and linguistic errors, which cause still more resulting errors in a cascading effect, spreading confusion, radiating outwards like ripples in a pond. When CNN uses the picture of the apple in their advertisements and says, "This is an apple," this is peak deceptiveness on their part, because they're equating this black and white factual statement with their own subjective brand of building fact pictures to push their narratives. And it's vital to understand that a fact picture can be crafted for nearly any and every side to every possible argument. With enough time, attention, and shrewd intellect, one could build a compelling fact picture supporting even the most absurd and outlandish viewpoint. By cobbling together several scientific studies on exercise-related heart attacks or fatalities, combined with various articles written by experts talking about the negative ramifications of testosterone, which can be raised significantly with heavy workouts, and perhaps combined with a few written pieces on how it's best to spend time with family or in quiet contemplation, one could present a case as to why exercise is bad and unhealthy. A case replete with facts, science, and expert opinion. Now, of course, we know this stance would be absurd and wrong-headed, inaccurate and deceptive and dishonest, and that one is far more likely to have a heart attack if they never exercise than if they do so consistently. Yet, these are technically the facts. They're just not the only facts. They're a cherry-picked subset of one side of the total fact picture, cleverly presented as if it were representative of the whole. The way in which facts are so often used today is more similar to how an advertising industry might use them, as opposed to someone on a genuine search for truth. Walking away from a corporate media or conventional academic source of information with great confidence that you've been objectively educated by facts is a bit like someone walking away from a Coke commercial believing they've been educated in the unrivaled taste of Coke, learning definitively it was the best cola. And this is the crux of the issue. When a Rachel Maddow or a Bill Maher or Chris Cuomo give you, quote, just the facts on any given issue, what they're really offering up is an extremely subjective selection of just their facts, and often even providing these in a mischaracterized and exaggerated manner. This is peak deception. We all do this to some extent, and we all can't help but do it, especially at present when our understanding of language has so degenerated and become so muddied. The true nefariousness arises not so much from the individual factual points themselves, but from the framing of these subjective, cherry-picked facts, as if they were reliably representative of the larger whole, giving a reasonable account of the bigger picture. As any observer of the mainstream press knows full well, this is almost never the case. And what's even more offensive is their claim to be the sole arbiters and possessors of these truths. You may recall the mocking and derision of Kellyanne Conway, which continues to this day, due to her innocent expression of the term alternative facts during the Trump campaign. She was making the obvious point that the controlled press had cited their facts, and she was citing hers, as the other side of the story. The insulting laughter and brutal attacks that followed made a disturbing point, and officially helped set a new disturbing precedent. This was the establishment class making it clear that only they were fit to create such fact pictures. Only they were allowed to call the tune and set the stage with regards to what we collectively accept as truths and realities. All others would be shamed and laughed out of the room. And these tactics work, of course, on most people. There are few things the average person fears more than embarrassment, or being mocked or made fun of. Most people will positively rush towards whatever point of view will ensure that exactly this doesn't come to pass, ensures they'll be safely ensconced within the herd and never the odd man out. Thus, the press uses this psychological lever to powerful effect and with great efficiency. Lately, a new term seems to be used heavily, which should be deeply unsettling to anyone paying close attention. The term counterfactual. This is essentially a slur, denoting an individual isn't falling into line with the establishment class approved fact picture. To only slightly exaggerate to make a point, because this press in both the US and UK positively swoon over Obama as possibly the greatest president in generations, and could easily create their own fact picture as to why this is an obvious truism, those who view him as a poor president would easily be framed as having a counterfactual stance, which insinuates you're essentially dismissing the truth and embracing a lie. I hope this helps make clear just how dangerous these tactics are, and how easily they could leap into the realm of policy and law. Very little stops individuals like these from crafting legislation in favor of, quote, upholding truth, or, as I believe they'd planned to do before Trump masterfully stole the term from them and blunted its power, laws or regulations or legislation regarding, quote, fake news. They're still attempting several tactics like this, and have in the recent past. The Russian bots concept being one of the best examples. Millions of us who spoke counterfactually, that is, contrary to the accepted establishment narratives, in other words, honestly and truthfully and independently, were often suspected and nearly as often outright accused of being Russian bots or Russian agents. This allowed social media platforms, especially, the leverage to censor and ban a large percentage of the population not locked into the mind-numbing haze of modern propaganda, and cut them out of the conversation. Now that their Russian narrative is largely torpedoed, the counterfactual concept gives them a means to continue these behaviors. And of course, they're further backed up, not only by a completely complicit media, but also by appeals to fact-checker organizations, virtually every last one of which is as left-leaning or establishment-oriented as it gets, representative of an extremely small and shrinking handful of individuals, yet essentially providing an entire network of, quote, experts, who all reference one another in a circular manner to continue their dominance of the prevailing discussion. I mention these things only to further expose them, but the good news is a great many throughout the Western world now understand what's occurring. Perhaps not the details and specifics, perhaps not in depth, but intuitively and instinctively. Enough red flags have been raised to where these words and ideas don't carry the weaponized power they once did. We'd be well served to begin questioning everything in this increasingly sick world. I've come to realize recently that while I've parted ways with the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who I grew up devouring every last word of, I couldn't be more thankful for his conception of the, quote, revaluation of all values, end quote, and his insistence on putting everything through a trial by fire, examining all preconceived notions and ideas, and never embracing anything lightly, even if the entire world seems to be doing so. This manner of thinking, as difficult as it can be to practice, let alone master, couldn't be more vital in our age. An age in which we no longer have ever-present sturdy foundations on which we can simply build further, but rather have to destroy some of the termite-eaten scaffolding, and possibly even dig downwards a bit to discover much firmer constructions from previous ages. And when you hear someone use the term counterfactual as an attack, I hope this raises a red flag from now on. And I'd like to end on the point we opened with, as it bears repeating over and over and over again, despite what Jeff Zucker and his tribe so aggressively try to sell. Facts are not the truth. Facts are a truth. And there's a world of difference between the two. Thanks for listening.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end.